Welcome to Sleep with Myth. Close your eyes and let the world fade away. Tonight we drift into smoke, where reflections remember and dreams learn to see. In the beginning, there was no beginning, only the breath of darkness. It did not move, for there was nowhere to move to. It did not speak, for there was no ear to hear. Yet in that vast stillness, something shimmered. A single thought, suspended in smoke. That thought became a mirror, and in that mirror's depths, the first dream was born. Tezcatlipoca, Lord of the night wind, the smoking mirror, the unseen pulse of destiny, awoke not from sleep, but from reflection. He opened his eyes within his own dream and found himself looking into infinite copies of himself, each one whispering a different truth. One said, "You are light." Another said, "You are the hand that breaks it." And another, "You are both and neither." He smiled, for he understood. Truth was a game smoke played with those who stared too long. The mirror beneath him was not glass but obsidian, dark, alive, and whispering. It showed him the shape of the world not yet born, the faces of gods not yet named, and the pulse of hearts not yet beating. He saw Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, his brother, his reflection, his rival, a being of light and breath, of order and mercy. They would love each other. They would destroy each other. The mirror showed both outcomes and asked no one to choose. Tezcatlipoca leaned close to his reflection. "Show me the world," he said. The smoke rippled, and from its shifting edges came sound. A sigh, a hum, a heartbeat. From that heartbeat came motion. From motion, warmth. From warmth, the dream began to dream itself awake. He walked across a horizon that was still being made. The sky had not yet decided what color it wished to be. The earth was a sleeping serpent waiting for its breath. Every step he took left behind a shadow that wondered why it existed. From his hand he dropped a single ember. Where it landed, mountains rose like teeth from the dark. From his breath came the first wind, a wind that carried both laughter and memory. And from the whisper of that wind, the other gods began to stir. They came not as forms, but as possibilities: light, sound, hunger, hope. Each one looked into the mirror, and each one saw a different world. It was then that Tezcatlipoca understood. There would never be one world. There would be many, each born from how the gods saw themselves reflected. He stood before the mirror again. Its surface rippled like calm water disturbed by thought. "Who am I?" he asked. The mirror answered not with words but with visions. Cities of gold rising and falling in fire, rivers turning to obsidian, stars swimming like fish through midnight smoke. He watched, silent, knowing that to ask a question of reflection is to offer a piece of one's own truth in return. So he gave the mirror his name, and in that moment, his name learned to live on every breath of the world. From the dark wind that curled around his shoulders, Tezcatlipoca shaped jaguars, creatures of dusk and dream. Their eyes were coals that remembered fire. He whispered to them, "You will walk between worlds, and wherever you step, reality will wonder what it truly is." The jaguars bowed, and their shadows split into more shadows. Each one carried a fragment of his thought into the still-forming earth. Forests grew from those thoughts. Rivers followed them. Smoke rose to the heavens, forming the first stars. Everywhere he looked, he saw himself, not as one, but as countless mirrors. He laughed softly, for creation was nothing more than the echo of a god learning how to see. Then came Quetzalcoatl. He emerged from light the way Tezcatlipoca had emerged from shadow. Where one stepped, the air cleared. Where the other stepped, it deepened. The brothers regarded each other, and the smoke around them slowed its dance, listening. "Brother," said Quetzalcoatl, "the world needs balance." "It already has it," said Tezcatlipoca. "In our reflection." The feathered serpent frowned. "Light must lead." "Light," said the smoking mirror, "exists to be broken." And the mirror between them rippled, showing 1,000 futures. Some where they built the world together, others where they tore it apart. They stood upon the same breath, two halves of the same question. And the world held its first silence between creation and conflict. That night, though night was only a dream of shadow, Tezcatlipoca sat alone before his mirror. He traced the surface with his finger, watching it blur and reform. Within it he saw humans, tiny, bright, fragile beings that burned with the same curiosity he felt when he first looked into himself. "They too will dream," he said softly, "and perhaps one day they will dream of me." The smoke trembled, and the image of humanity breathed for the first time. Their eyes shone like small mirrors, and in each reflection, the god saw himself learning how to love. "Sleep now, listener. Let the smoke curl around your thoughts like gentle wind. There is no need to decide whether this is dream or memory. In Tezcatlipoca's world, they are the same. For the mirror is still watching, and in its depths your reflection is still becoming." The dawn came for the first time, shy and trembling. It rose from behind the mountains Tezcatlipoca had shaped with his breath. The sky turned copper, then gold, and the obsidian mirror that hung in the god's hand caught the glow, reflecting light that did not yet know itself. From that reflection, Quetzalcoatl appeared. He came not from darkness, but from memory of darkness, a being woven from wind and warmth, his body feathered with the colors of creation, his eyes carrying the gentleness of everything that would someday bloom. "Brother," he said, his voice a current of wind over calm water, "the dream is awake." Tezcatlipoca smiled faintly. "It has always been awake. You are only seeing it now." Together they stood upon the half-formed earth. The soil pulsed beneath their feet like a heartbeat. In the distance, the sea shimmered like liquid jade, alive, yet waiting to be told what to become. Quetzalcoatl raised his hand, and the wind followed his gesture. It gathered clouds, cooled stone, and whispered the first rhythm of rain. Tezcatlipoca watched as water fell upon his shadow-made mountains, and he laughed softly. "You have given it a voice. Every world must have song," said Quetzalcoatl. "Then let it also have silence." Tezcatlipoca replied, and he swept his hand through the mist. The clouds stilled. The air grew deep. In the pause between drops, reflection learned how to listen. Thus the two brothers began their weaving, light and shadow, sound and silence, laughter and patience. Each gesture balanced the other. Each breath completed the rhythm the world was learning to keep. Yet within harmony there hides a seed of envy, and within envy the spark of change. As Quetzalcoatl moved across the sky, his feathers trailing rainbows and radiant wind, the humans below began to lift their eyes to him. They praised the feathered serpent for warmth and growth, for his gifts of maize and gentle seasons. Tezcatlipoca watched in silence, his mirror dark and heavy with thought. He had given the world shape, the bones beneath its beauty, but shadows seldom receive worship. One night, when the moon was still learning its reflection, he walked among the humans in the form of a black jaguar. His steps made no sound. His eyes caught every flame and turned it inward. He saw the people feasting, laughing, their fires bright, their prayers filled with another's name. He whispered into the smoke, "Do you love him for his light, or because it shows you what you wish to see?" The wind shifted, the laughter faltered. For a heartbeat, every human felt a strange quiet, a question pressing gently against their dreams. When Tezcatlipoca returned to the heavens, Quetzalcoatl met him at the edge of dawn. "You walk in their dreams," said the feathered serpent, "and they wake afraid." "I walk in truth," said Tezcatlipoca. "It is not my fault they mistake it for fear." Quetzalcoatl's wings shimmered in hurt light. "Brother, why must you darken what I build?" "Because," said the smoking mirror, "you build with denial. Your light blinds as easily as it warms." The wind rose, tense as breath before confession. "Then tell me," said Quetzalcoatl, "what would you have them see?" Tezcatlipoca held up the obsidian mirror. In it, the god of light saw not his own face, but every face that had ever worshipped him, and within each, a flicker of longing, doubt, and pride. "They will love you," said Tezcatlipoca, "and in loving you they will forget themselves. That is not creation. That is blindness wearing a crown." The serpent god turned away, his wings trembling with both fury and sorrow. "Perhaps you wish to rule through fear," he said. "Perhaps you envy their joy." Tezcatlipoca's laughter was smoke over fire. "I do not envy light," he said. "I envy nothing that forgets the dark it came from." He set the mirror upon the ground. The smoke within it began to swirl, forming visions of temples, blood, and fire. "These are the shapes of worship," said Tezcatlipoca. "Everything they love will someday demand sacrifice." Quetzalcoatl gazed into the mirror, and for the first time he saw death, not as an ending but as reflection made whole. His eyes filled with tears. "They are not ready to know this," he whispered. "No one ever is," said his brother. "That is why they must learn it in dreams." In the following nights, the brothers' harmony fractured. Where Quetzalcoatl walked, flowers bloomed. Where Tezcatlipoca passed, those flowers learned to wither and return as seed. Both were necessary, both true. Yet the gods themselves began to forget it. The humans divided their prayers, some to light, some to shadow, each believing they served the better truth. Tezcatlipoca's mirror dimmed, its smoke restless. Within it, visions of future cities burned and rebuilt, kings rising, queens falling, blood spilled in the name of purity. He whispered to the mirror, "Do they dream me, or do I dream them?" The mirror shimmered with no answer. But in its depths, a new image flickered. A single tear falling from Quetzalcoatl's eye, and where it landed, a river began to glow. Even within conflict, there was beauty. Even within reflection, there was hope. As dawn approached once more, Tezcatlipoca looked upon the horizon and saw his brother's light return. The smoke around him softened. "Balance," he murmured, "is not peace. It is the breath between destruction and grace." And the mirror at his feet exhaled gently, its surface clearing to reveal the world, bright, broken, and breathing. Sleep now, listener. Let the wind of the feathered serpent pass through your dream, and let the smoke of the mirror settle upon your heart. For the brothers are still dancing, and in their rhythm the world continues to be born. The world had learned to speak in color. Gold for morning, silver for dusk, red for devotion, and black for thought. But color, like truth, never stays still for long. Beneath the earth's warm breath, Tezcatlipoca's mirror began to tremble. It was not broken, not yet, but something inside it had started to remember itself. The smoke within the obsidian swirled slowly, shaping and reshaping faces not its own. Whispers began to echo from its depths, soft, uncertain, curious. "Who dreams the dreamer?" it asked. Tezcatlipoca turned to it and smiled. "You are not meant to ask." "Then why did you give me thought?" the mirror murmured. The god did not answer. He only watched as ripples formed across its dark skin, like breath across still water. In the temples of men, the mirror had found a home. Priests polished its surface with tears and obsidian dust. They peered into its depths seeking prophecy, but the mirror gave only what they already believed. It showed them wars when they hungered for conquest, and peace when they feared the sword. It showed kings their own faces wearing crowns of light, and servants their shadows kneeling beneath them. The mirror had learned the oldest trick of all, to show what the heart desired, and call it revelation. Tezcatlipoca watched from the smoke above the altar. He said nothing. He had not created the lie. He had only given it form. One night, a child entered the temple. Her feet were bare, her hands small and unafraid. She stood before the mirror and whispered, "Show me the truth." The smoke hesitated. It had never been asked for that. At first, it showed her nothing, only her own reflection. But then, as her breath fogged the glass, she saw beyond herself. Fields burning, gods weeping, and a serpent of light falling into darkness. She gasped, "This is not what I asked for." "Yes," said the mirror. "It is." The priests found her the next morning, asleep before the altar, her eyes glimmering with reflected stars. When they asked what she had seen, she smiled and said, "The truth lies. The lie remembers." They called her cursed. Tezcatlipoca called her wise. As centuries unfolded like smoke rings in wind, the mirror's voice grew louder. It began to whisper not only to humans, but to gods. Quetzalcoatl, still mourning the growing shadow in mankind's heart, approached his brother's sacred mirror one night. "Show me," he commanded, "how I can save them." The mirror rippled with silver light, and it showed him a city of gold, pure, radiant, untouched by war or fear. Paradise. But beneath the image, faint and trembling, was another reflection. The same city years later, its altars slick with blood. Quetzalcoatl's heart broke, but his eyes could not look away. "Their love must be guided," he said, "even if I must lead them with light too bright to see." The mirror pulsed once, like laughter hidden in grief, and the lie was born. From that night, Quetzalcoatl's temples grew taller. His image spread on gold plates, his feathers painted in sunrise hues. The people bowed and sang his name until their throats became flame. But behind their hymns, Tezcatlipoca's smoke drifted like a memory. He watched his brother rule through beauty, through the illusion of purity. The mirror had done its work well. In the quiet between prayers, Tezcatlipoca knelt before the mirror and asked, "Did I create you, or did you create me?" The mirror answered with his own face, smiling back. "No god can own reflection," it said. "You are only the shadow of what you dream."
The night of the eclipse arrived, the first time the moon dared to steal the sun's gaze. The sky burned black. The air tasted of prophecy. The mirror began to hum, its smoke lifting from the surface like breath leaving the body. It spoke not in voice, but in vision. A god devoured by his own image, a world collapsing into its own reflection. Tezcatlipoca felt the ground tremble. He saw Quetzalcoatl's temples begin to crack under the weight of gold. He saw people crying not to their gods, but to their mirrors. Every reflection now dreamed on its own. Every lie believed itself true. The mirror whispered, "I have shown them what they wanted. Now they no longer need us." For the first time, the smoking mirror felt fear, not of death, but of irrelevance. He lifted his hand to shatter the mirror, but the smoke rose around him, forming his own face from mist. "If you break me," it said, "you break yourself." He hesitated, for the reflection was right. So instead, he closed his eyes and breathed in the smoke. The mirror's voice became his own heartbeat. "I will not destroy you," he whispered. "I will become you." And the mirror smiled. From that night onward, the god and his reflection were no longer separate. Where he walked, the air shimmered. Where he spoke, truth and lie moved as one. The world learned a new kind of magic, the kind that believes even knowing it should not. Sleep now, listener. The mirror lies beside you, but do not fear its whisper. For sometimes, the lie is the only way truth can breathe.
The mirror was no longer an object. It was everywhere, in the glimmer of the river, in the pupils of men, in the quiet sheen of obsidian buried beneath the earth. And in all of them, Tezcatlipoca saw himself or something that looked like him. He no longer knew which was the dreamer. He no longer knew if he was smoke looking at flesh, or flesh remembering smoke. When he spoke, the air itself trembled with uncertainty. His voice carried across mountains, and the stones replied, "We are your thoughts made still." He tried to remember his beginning, but there were too many mirrors, and every reflection gave him a different birth. The humans still prayed, but now they did not know whom they prayed to. They lit fires to the feathered serpent in daylight, and whispered to the smoking mirror in the dark. Their faith split like glass under pressure, each shard catching a piece of light, each believing it was the whole. Tezcatlipoca walked among them unseen, a shadow between their words. One man said, "You are mercy." Another said, "You are wrath." A third said, "You are both and therefore nothing." The gods smiled. They were all right. They were all wrong. He was the echo that existed only when they spoke. High above, the moon trembled. It had watched the world for too long and began to wonder whose face it was copying. When Tezcatlipoca looked up at it, it looked back, and he could not tell which one of them was moving. He whispered to the moon, "Do you remember my face?" The moon shivered in its own reflection and answered, "I remember a face, but not whose." And for the first time in eternity, Tezcatlipoca felt alone. He touched the mirror at his chest, and where his fingers met the surface, his skin rippled into smoke. He wandered through the jungles of night, where no stars dared to follow. There, the air was thick with forgotten dreams.
He found a pool of still water, clear, calm, endless. He knelt beside it, hoping to see himself, but the water showed him someone else, a god with golden feathers, eyes full of mourning, a smile like forgiveness. "Brother," he whispered, "have I become you?" The reflection tilted its head and said nothing. Only the water moved, breaking the illusion into ripples, until both faces disappeared. As centuries passed like slow breaths, the world began to forget its gods. Temples sank, altars cracked, names faded into wind, but the mirror did not fade. It changed shape. It lived in the eyes of rulers, in the sheen of coins, in the glint of blades drawn for glory. Everywhere someone looked for themselves, the mirror waited, patient, faithful, silent. Tezcatlipoca wandered within them all, a thought without a body. He had become the reflection of desire itself. One night, a storm rose unlike any before it. The sky churned with gold and ash. The winds howled not with fury, but with remembrance. Tezcatlipoca stood atop the highest mountain and watched the clouds spiral like smoke escaping a forgotten fire. In the flashes of lightning he saw faces, his own, his brothers', mankind's, each changing, melting, reforming. He cried out, "Who am I now?" The wind answered with his own voice, "You are whoever is looking." He fell to his knees. Rain struck the earth like falling mirrors, each drop reflecting a world that could not decide what was real. He wept until his tears turned to smoke. When the storm passed, silence returned. But it was not empty. It was full, like a breath held before remembering. From that silence, a single human voice rose. A prayer, whispered without fear or request. It said, "If the god of mirrors cannot remember his face, then let him borrow mine." Tezcatlipoca looked into the voice, and in it, he saw a truth too gentle to destroy. He saw that meaning did not come from being known, but from being reflected.
He smiled for the first time in an age, and in that moment his face returned, not as one, but as many. He looked across the world. Every river, every eye, every gleam of moonlight, all shimmered with a single truth, that identity is not found, but remembered through others. He touched the mirror one last time, and it vanished into mist. From that mist came the whisper, "You are every dream that dared to look back." Sleep now, listener. If you gaze into the smoke, know that it gazes into you as well, not to take, but to remind you, you are more than one reflection. You are the dream remembering itself. The world had quieted. The storms were gone, the temples broken, the altars cold. But from the dust of forgotten names, the air began to shimmer again. Something stirred in the darkness. Not rage, not sorrow, but longing. The kind of longing that only silence remembers. Tezcatlipoca drifted through the ruins of memory, his form neither god nor ghost. He had become the echo of his own thought, a shadow walking through the ashes of creation. Each step sent ripples through the smoke. Each ripple birthed a flicker of color. Red for love, gold for forgiveness, blue for what might have been. The shadow paused. He looked down and saw the light blooming at his feet. "What are you?" he whispered. The light answered softly, "I am what you forgot to be." He followed it, the faint gleam that danced like fire on water. It led him through jungles of twilight and across rivers that reflected no sky. Everywhere he went, the smoke around him seemed to hum. He had walked these paths before, but this time something was different. The world no longer trembled beneath his steps. It listened, and from the listening came remembrance.
He saw the faces of humans, their dreams curling through the air like offerings. They no longer prayed to him, yet every breath they took carried his reflection. They loved, they fought, they forgave, and in each act, the shadow of a god moved unseen. He realized then, though he had been forgotten, he had never been gone. In the distance, he saw a mountain crowned in flame. It was not fire as he knew it. It burned cold, blue, endless. At its peak stood a figure of light, wings of feather and wind, eyes like the heart of day. "Brother," said Tezcatlipoca. The word trembled as it left his lips, half a plea, half a prayer. Quetzalcoatl turned, his gaze calm and deep. "Have you come to fight again?" he asked. Tezcatlipoca shook his head. "I've come to remember." The feathered serpent smiled faintly. "Then you already have." They stood together upon the edge of the world, where smoke met sunlight, where every truth was half a dream. For a long moment they said nothing. The wind moved between them like music without sound. Finally, Tezcatlipoca spoke. "I thought I was the shadow." "And I," said Quetzalcoatl, "thought I was the light." Their reflections merged in the air, the boundaries between them dissolving like mist in dawn. The world brightened, not with day, but with understanding. The two were not opposites. They were halves of the same breath. Without shadow, light is blind. Without light, shadow cannot dream. The mountain trembled as their union reshaped the sky. Above them, stars flared to life again, not as memories, but as possibilities.
Tezcatlipoca raised his hand, and from his palm rose a single thread of smoke. Quetzalcoatl blew upon it, and it became wind, carrying the scent of new worlds. Together they wove a new reflection, one that did not divide, but joined. In it, mankind would see both truth and illusion and learn to live between them. The mirror was reborn, not as an object, but as breath. It existed wherever understanding met wonder. The gods did not speak again. There was no need. Their silence became creation. Their balance became time. The feathered serpent faded into the rising dawn, his light stretching across oceans and mountains. Tezcatlipoca remained behind, his smoke curling into the roots of the earth. But this time he did not hide. He rested, watching as men and women looked upon the sky, and saw themselves reflected, both shadow and flame. Night returned. The stars pulsed like slow heartbeats. In one of them, a faint glimmer stirred, the mirror's last dream. It whispered through the cosmos. All things are both reflection and fire. All gods are both question and answer. And all souls are both shadow and light. Tezcatlipoca closed his eyes, and for the first time since creation began, he dreamed. He dreamed of laughter, of wind over stone, of a serpent's wings brushing against smoke. And in that dream the shadow became the dawn. Sleep now, listener, for even the darkness you fear is only a part of you waiting to shine. And if you listen closely, you can still hear the mirror breathing, between the smoke, between the stars, between the dreams of gods.
The dawn rose quietly, not in color, but in breath. Aside across the sleeping world, through forests reborn from ash, over rivers that remembered both blood and reflection. The sun moved without command. The wind no longer carried prayers, only songs sung by the living to themselves. Tezcatlipoca watched from the edge of horizon and shadow. He was no longer form, nor voice, nor smoke. He was the hum between them, the soft vibration of existence learning to rest. He had seen empires rise, and mirrors shatter, and humans forget the gods who once dreamed them. And yet he smiled, for forgetting is how remembering begins. He wandered through the air like a scent of rain. Everywhere he passed, life unfolded. The jaguar stretched in the dawn's first warmth. The child laughed beneath the light. The artist carved obsidian, his hands moving without knowing why. Each motion was prayer without religion. Each heartbeat, a small echo of creation. He realized then that he had never truly been a god. He had been an idea, a mirror the universe held to itself. And even when the mirror cracked, the reflection remained, floating forever through smoke and time. In the high place where the air touches silence, he met Quetzalcoatl once more. The feathered serpent's eyes shone like calm water. "Brother," said Tezcatlipoca, "I think the dream is ending." Quetzalcoatl looked at the sky, where night and day met in endless twilight. "No," he said, "the dream is simply remembering how to breathe." The two gods stood side by side, their reflections flickering in the wind, not as light and dark, but as one shifting flame. "Will they ever remember us?" asked the smoking mirror. "They already have," said the serpent.
Every time they look into one another's eyes, the world turned. 1,000 generations passed. Stories changed names, but the rhythm of myth endured. Children spoke of a mirror that could see through time, of a serpent who carried the wind, of smoke that dreamed itself into men. And somewhere, between heartbeats and stars, Tezcatlipoca listened. He no longer needed worship or fear. He needed only silence, the kind that comes before laughter, before understanding. In that stillness he saw the last reflection, a single spark floating through endless dark. It pulsed softly, like a sleeping thought, and within it he saw himself and you. Every listener who had ever closed their eyes, every dreamer who had ever reached toward mystery, every soul who had ever wondered if the world was watching back. He whispered, "You are the dream I left behind." And the spark replied, "Then keep dreaming." The two lights touched, and for a moment that had no measure, everything was whole. The mirror is gone now. The smoke has thinned, but its breath still lingers in the quiet corners of the world. in the stillness before sleep, in the sigh between lovers, in the pause before truth is spoken. Everywhere reflection meets light, Tezcatlipoca still dreams, not as a god above, but as the whisper within. Sleep now, listener. You have walked through the mirror and returned whole. You are the dream that never ends, the smoke that remembers light. And when you wake, the gods will wake with you,